We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 5, episode number 13. And yeah, we at the weekend, man. We at the weekend. First and foremost, man, we on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. We provide high-five takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're OG of the show, I appreciate the check-in. But once again, man, episode number 13. There's a lot going on across the sporting landscape. Hope you guys had a great, productive week. Let your head down, though, as we approach the weekend. And, boy, it's a lot going on, man. Boy, it's a lot going on, man. The last 24 hours across the sport landscape has been epic as far as just these gems and these news jump-offs coming across the sports desk. And, man, first we got the World Series jumping off, man. Congratulations to the Toronto Blue Jays. Also to the Los Angeles Dodgers as the Fall Classic kicks off tonight. I can't wait. I'm sitting back, got that popcorn ready like T.O. Enjoy some World Series baseball tonight. A lot of people, coming into this series think it's the Dodgers series to lose. A lot of people think it's going to be a 5-game series, but for me, I think the Dodgers is the most talented, team, in Major League Baseball. I mean, look at the payroll of the Los Angeles Dodgers. But, Toronto, man, is a team that, stand alive like the Bee Gees back in the day, man, winning Game 7 of the ALCS and getting themselves into the World Series. And, it's just been a lot of talk about statistics, team, sweeping the NLCS and the team, going 7. Last few times we've had that situation happen, the team that went 7 games, to get out or get into the World Series was able to prevail. So, I know that the Dodgers is big-time favorites, but, Toronto, man, I think they're going to be a tough out. I think it's going to be a tough out. The Dodgers, they got the best, pitching staff between the two ball clubs, hands down. They got the best player, in Shohei Ohtani. And, I just think that, for me, the Toronto Blue Jays are the sentimental favorites. They're a Canadian, ball club, but, I think they're an underdog. And, a lot of people, like underdogs, man. So we'll see what that series do as that unfolds, as it jumps off tonight. Also, we got National Football League as we mosey into week number 8 across the National Football League, man. We're going to break all that down, man, what's going on as we head into the week, just the matchups, injuries and things of that particular nature, as things are now scaling up into really fall time across the NFL. And, you're going to see some teams out there really kind of separate themselves and teams that really season just about been won for the most part. But on the main slate, we got the National Basketball Association is back. The NBA is back into the fold. It's been a nice little week. Shout out to just all the great performances we've seen so far. Wemby, just an epic performance coming out. Aaron Gordon dropping a 50-piece last night, man, against the Golden State Warriors, the Denver Nuggets. That was an epic game. Steph putting up his 40-piece. There's a lot going on up out here, man. The rookies showing out. VJ Edgecombe dropping, a nice little 30-plus piece, man, in this debut in the NBA. So we've gotten a nice little glimpse of what we've seen so far. Los Angeles Lakers in the fold. Luka Doncic, looking slim and trim out here. We just got a chance to see them. Houston Rockets, with KD into the fold. It's a nice little look watching them, take on, Oklahoma City Thunder earlier this week. Speaking of the Oklahoma City Thunder, they had an epic game last night against the Indiana Pacers, handling that business as well. The Pacers, a new look unit from last season. Lost Miles Turner, Halliburton out for the season. TJ McConnell, banged up. So just a different, squad for Indiana. But they play hard, man. Shout out to Benedict Mathurin. This is a team that, really was a competitive ball game. Thought they had an opportunity to win the game, for the Pacers, Oklahoma City Thunder, struggling. I ain't gonna say struggling, but people trying to come at that chin, man, when you're the world champions, man. But they've been able to, get a couple victories, in these overtime games to start the season. So I'm stoked about that, and just the whole ambiance of the NBA, man, just great to see. Can't forget about the new package that the NBA got to roll out, the television package with NBC. Also, Amazon into that fold as well. And I ain't gonna front though, man. I'm loving what I'm seeing from the NBC. It's been a minute. It's been close to 25 years since NBA basketball has been played on NBC. And so, I'm liking what I'm seeing. They basically bagged all the big time announcers from TNT and brought them over there, such as Reggie Millers and Grant Hills, and just a nice little group. Jamal Crawford getting it in over there. So, nice little thing. We had the interview with Mike Tirico and Mr. Michael Jeffrey Jordan the other day. It was nice to see Mike into the fold. As a Bulls fan and, a big-time Michael Jordan fan, it's good to see Mike back involved in the game of basketball and just getting his insights and, what's going on and what's jumping off out here. Add a little OG experience into the fold. But with all that being said, we got to get into the whole situation. I mean, a whole situation with Mr. Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, also, too, Scary Terry Rozier, all these three gentlemen getting arrested by the feds on what seems to be a gambling ring from a card situation with Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones, and also with Scary Terry Rozier, just betting, DraftKings it out and whatever it out, just, putting them bets in there, man. This is a guy that got a $100 million contract, and what it boils down to me is that either this guy got a gambling addiction or this guy's the dumbest dude ever. I mean, people out here struggling. The economy is all up and down, man. People out here looking for jobs and so forth. And you get upwards of $100 million contract you've signed so far through your career in the NBA. Good basketball player. I'm actually a fan of Terry Rozier. Like his game. But to hear this, and I'm just like, dude, you already was under hot water. And it's funny because the NBA, to me, it just shows just a deeper element to it. And I'll get into the individuals individually in a minute. But for Adam Silver, it just smells real fishy right about now. Because for a enterprise such as the NBA, $1 billion conglomerate with $1 billion owners and $1 billion, valuations on these sports teams, we just seen the Los Angeles Lakers, just sell, over the summer. And so, for him not to have no insight, for him not to see and peep game of what's going on and what's cracking right about now, boy, stop. Ain't no way. I'm not saying that the feds might have tipped him off to certain pieces of information. What I'm saying is that they getting too much to the bag and to the money right now. And last time I checked, Adam Silver's a former lawyer and an attorney himself. So, he going to do his due diligence about guys into the league, man, especially when you dealing out these contracts and at the numbers that they at right about now, presently in the NBA. So for me to sit here and say that this guy didn't have no idea what's going on, man, boy, stop. And that's what happened when you make your bed with the gambling houses. And we all knew this, man, as Americans and sports lovers. People betting all across the world already know what time it is, man. It's just a matter of time. It's not like, if you want to place a bet, you got to walk inside a gaming house. You just do it straight from your phone. I mean, how convenient is that? And so the temptation of that, even from an athlete, a guy getting big time money, I mean, people love getting money in all different kind of ways. And we see it with just this whole, situation going on right now. Now, as I mentioned, it's definitely, I smell a rat or a fishy situation with the NBA and Adam Silver. But for the players individually, they done. Chauncey Billups, the head coach, he just coached the game the night before getting popped off. I mean, where they do that at? Now, Mr. Big Shot, big time fan of Chauncey Billups, without question. Tremendous respect for him. McDonald's All-American back in 1995. We was in high school at the same time. Both hooping. So, I admired his game, and made himself into a player after, traveling, across the league his first few years in the NBA. Went on to get to the Detroit Pistons, and next thing you know, an NBA champion and NBA Finals MVP. So, tremendous respect for Chauncey Billups. But I got to dig into this a little bit from a standpoint of what really jumped off. What really was the involvement in it, especially when you're hearing, it's all with mob ties. It's just like, man, it's a real situation. Because I'll just take an educated guess and just say that the FBI, upon the investigation, more than likely, it probably started off from the crime family side of things and just kind of got some information down the pipeline about, Billups and Jones and Rozier and so forth. But as far as their careers and any jobs in the NBA is concerned, it's been one on that. The Portland Trail Blazers, a young basketball team, but I just don't see him going back to being a head coach for the Portland Trail Blazers again, or any involvement in the NBA, because I think that Adam Silver was a smart enough guy to know that, hey, if this is a situation where it's more guys, and I believe goddamn right it's more guys, we just go ahead and put that out there. I believe it's a deeper involvement than what we see. And so, I think that, they're going to be the sacrificial lambs in this situation. We seen what happened to Jontay Porter. And so, the precedent has been set as far as what the NBA is going to be able to do, and Adam Silver going to be able to drop a hammer down. So it's going to be interesting to see, man, just the tea leaves from this. Usually when you get a mobbed up situation, you usually get a snitching situation on a real street level mode, and that may expose more names out here in this whole situation. So, boy, it's just been a whole thing, man, and just the news. When it came down the pipeline, I thought it was what they call fake news, man, but this thing is a real thing, and we'll see how deep this hole goes with this whole story, man. So we'll definitely just see what it do. Coming back, man, we're gonna jump off week number 8 across the National Football League. There's a lot of interesting matchups. We got some key injuries going into week number 8 across the NFL, and so we're gonna take a deep dive in that. Also, man, I'm gonna hit y'all with another Big 5, man. I got my Big 5 NBA storylines, man, as we go and kick off the NBA season. So, yeah, I'm going to hit y'all with that, man, before we close the show out, man. But coming up, man, we're going to bring the rest of the show. I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The Spot. Before I get into the National Football League week number 8, man, don't forget to check your boy out on YouTube. We on Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, on Podbean, where podcasts can also be listened to. On Facebook, we on Fire Sports. On Twitter, X at We on Fire Sports. So we out here, man. We appreciate the love as well. And before I switch gears into the National Football League, man, NBA as well, man, is another tidbit that we got during the first, inaugural week of the season, was just a whole new look on ESPN, man, with Chuck, Ernie, and Kenny. The former Inside the NBA crew, they back at it again. ESPN style it's the same jump off, same swag, same studio. So it looks just basically the same. Just the only thing that's different, you just see an ESPN side. Chuck, coming with the weight loss. Not sure if Chuck on that Ozempic, but Chuck looking good, man. He looking good, Chuck out here, man. So it was good to see those gentlemen back into the fold as well. And week number 8, man, in the National Football League is an interesting week. We seen things jump off last night with them Chargers knocking off the Minnesota Vikings 37-10. The Chargers defense, man, came to play. The Vikings, their offense is looking anemic every single week. Not sure if J.J. McCarthy can be a knight in shining armor, but, this team is reeling to me offensively. The Chargers, 5-3 right now. It's a team that I put my chest out there and said they'll win the AFC West. Right now, they're still looking good. And the Chargers, they took a couple of early losses, more recently. But this team's able to bounce back. Justin Herbert having a solid game. 3 TDs, man, throwing for 227 yards on the game. Vidal, the running back, throwing up a bill and a touchdown in the game. Ladd McConkey having that nice little touchdown reception. So, liking what I'm seeing from the Chargers, man. Looks like they back into a positive ram also, too. They got a couple guys coming back healthy for the ball club. So, they looking real good. And so, that's a nice little tidbit of Thursday night football. Like I said, man, the matchups in the games have been definitely better. This probably, is a matchup that, when you looked at it early on in the schedule, you thought it'd be probably better records between the teams. But, nah, we still got a, good football game, at least from the Chargers standpoint, man. And so, as we transition into week number 8, the first game that, is kind of catching my eye a little bit in week number 8 is the rematch game between the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. A couple weeks ago, man, the New York Giants shocked the football world and knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles. It was the debut of Jackson Dart and Scatterboo. It had some epic game. It was a nice little scene, man, up there in New York. The fans was, soaking it all in. It's been a desolate situation, just from an organization standpoint. The Giants coming into this game 2-5, hadn't won a game, on the road so far this season. Philadelphia Eagles, finally getting off the snide, losing a couple games in a row. They come into this week. A.J. Brown just, breaking news. He's going to be out on Sunday. So, they going to have to come with it, man. I think that the Eagles, the Giants are definitely on their radar. Funny part about it is the Eagles is a 7.5-point favorite in this football game. That could be a tricky situation for my gamblers out there. But, I think that the Eagles will be able to win this football game. I do think it's going to be a tight football game, though. I think that, the Giants is going to put up a fight. But I just think that the Eagles, since they got them on their radar, I think that A.J. Brown, injury is a nice little injury for them. But it's time to see some Saquon Barkley. That's what you got them for, man. You got them for these type of situations, man. And so they hadn't been able to run the football as well the last month or so, the Eagles. And so to bring, just a situation with Barkley into the fold and him being able to run the football and bounce it out a little bit, I think it'll be better served with Philadelphia this week. So man, I got the Eagles, winning that game. I kind of see it more so, 27 to 17. Got Eagles in just that outfit. And another game I'm getting a keen eye to, just a little, personal interest, is my Chicago Bears coming to this week, taking on the Baltimore Ravens. This game will be played down in Baltimore. The Ravens, they 1-5 on the year. This is a team that a lot of people predicted to not only get out of the AFC, but win the Super Bowl. Yours truly in that as well with that prediction. And it's just been ugly, from just bad defense to injuries to just bad offense at times. And, the Ravens, that season on the line in this football game. Just keep it all the way 100. Lamar Jackson looks like he's probably going to suit up in this game. Not sure. That's kind of iffy and up a little bit still. But, the Bears, they're 4 in a row. Bears started the season 0-2. A lot of people thought in Chicago the sky was falling. I was a little frustrated. My fellow Bears fans was frustrated. My guys over there at the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast, Esau Lane, my man Michael Scott, the Mad Russian, they was frustrated. But, we just got on that horse, man. 4 wins in a row. Caleb Williams playing some good football. It's been a little up and down, but, liking the offense now, the Bears being able to run the football. On the other side for the Ravens, they haven't been able to run the football. Offense has been just fell off a cliff since, the injury to Lamar Jackson. I think that the Ravens are going to be up for this game. It's going to be the Bears' toughest football game this season. But I'm going with my Chicago Bears. I think that the Bears have finally found the formula to be able to run the football. The Ravens' defense has been hot garbage. I just think that Orr, the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, they're a dead man walking. I think that the Bears are going to send them to an early grave in this football game. I got the Bears going down to Baltimore, knocking off the Ravens 28-24. I think it's going to come down to the, fourth quarter in this football game, man. But I think the Bears now, they're confident. They believe in Ben Johnson. And I think that, they're going to roll on to their 5th consecutive victory of the season. Another game, man, that caught my interest just for this particular week is we got the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Houston Texans. Now, the Niners, they 5-2 on the season so far. Brock Purdy not playing in this game. They got 1,000,001 injuries across the board for this football club. And I think Ricky Pearsall, the wide receiver, he's not going to play in this game as well. The Texans, this is a team that, 2-4. The offensive line probably the worst in the National Football League. C.J. Stroud, coming off his 4-touchdown game a couple weeks ago, looked like a different guy last week. And I just think that, for me, team that most people predicted to win the AFC South this season, looks like that ship may have passed as, the Indianapolis Colts, they 6-1 on the year, but we'll get into them in a little bit. But, this is a must-win game for the Texans. Now, Mac Jones, he's been playing some good football for the San Francisco 49ers. But they are walking wounded. Fred Warner went out a couple weeks ago with the ankle situation. And so, Chris McCaffrey still playing good football. So, George Kittle, I believe, playing this football game as well. He dropped a dud last week. So, he looking for a bounce back. And so, I don't know, man. I just think that, to me, this is one of those games where if the Texans go to 2-5, I think that, the playoffs for them, I think that ship is sailed. But I think that the Texans playing at home, I got them winning this football game against the San Francisco 49ers. At the end of the day, You know, Mac Jones been playing some good football, but the Texans got one of the best defenses in the National Football League, and they looking and they foaming at the mouth, and they definitely don't want to go into 2-5 on the year. So yeah, I got the Texans winning this football game. I got this one though. I got this one 21-17 Texans. Another game that piqued me a little interest just a little bit. We got them Dallas Cowboys, man, taking on the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos and Sean Payton 5-2 on the year coming in, man. They undefeated so far, Mile High Stadium. You know, the Cowboys, this is a team that Dak Prescott, if you look at his numbers, 16 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. You know, stats would say he the MVP of the league. But this is a one-sided, you know, type of football club. Their defense is probably the worst in the National Football League. The Broncos got the best defense, you know, from a potential standpoint to me in the league. You know, Sean Payton gonna have his team geared up. You know, this is a team that has an opportunity to try to get themselves situated in that AFC West. You know, you got Kansas City, you know, now trying to play some good football as well. So, you know, Broncos, man, this is a big litmus test for them, and they've been able to get off the mat. You know, the epic win last week. Man, what an epic win was that last week against the New York Giants. And so this team is playing with a whole bunch of confidence. And Bo Nix, you know, finally looking like he did last season in his rookie campaign for the Denver Broncos. And so, you know, this is one at that 425 slot I'm definitely going to be checking out. But I got the Broncos win this one. I mean, they 3-0 at home, man. You know, the Cowboys, you know, this is their 5th, you know, road game. They 1-3 on the road so far this season. You know, I think that, you know, the Denver Broncos defense will be good enough to stifle the Cowboys a little bit, where the Cowboys ain't going to be able to put up no 30 pieces. And I think that, you know, on the other side of the coin, the Dallas Cowboys defense can't stop a cold. So, you know, I got the Broncos in this one. I do think it's going to be a little bit more high scoring, though. I think that this one's going to be 31-28 Broncos in this one, man. Straight up. Then, you know, we got the Sunday night football matchup, man, the reunion, or not the reunion, but the homecoming. You know, well, not really the homecoming, because it's really a home game for Aaron Rodgers. The Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Green Bay Packers. These teams, a few years back, many moons back, they faced off in the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers on the Packers side. You know, Mike Tomlin still in Pittsburgh, you know, from them times. And, you know, they've linked up. And so far, the Steelers are 4-2 on the year. You know, this is a team that in that AFC North, they got a real opportunity to win the division so far this year. And this is a big-time contest for them. The Packers are 4-1-1 on the year. You know, they playing in that NFC North. That's probably the best division in the National Football League right now. You know, Jordan Love, you know, coming in, you know, taking on, you know, his big homie, Aaron Rodgers, man. This is going to be must-see TV. You know, the Steelers, their defense is finally kind of playing a little better than what they did, you know, the early part of the year, because, you know, this is a team that is a little old on defense, re-signed TJ Watt to the big-time deal. And, you know, I thought, you know, it was going to be big-time, you know, defense side and the offense kind of rev it up. But Aaron Rodgers has been able to hold the fort down, you know, just on the offensive side, playing smart football, getting rid of the football. And so, you know, this is going to be, to me, kind of like a pick'em, man, because Green Bay, even though this game is played in Pittsburgh, is a 2.5-point favorite just in this one. But I think the Steelers win this football game, man. I just think that, you know, the fans going to be juiced up. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be trying to play some good football. They're going to try to protect him as much as they can. And they're going to be able to try to get rid of the football in under 2 seconds. You know, DK Metcalf, you know, he's been playing some good football for the Steelers so far this season with 4 touchdowns so far in the year. And so we'll see what the balance is on the offensive side of the football for the Steelers, too, because I think that for them to be able to win this football game, they got to be able to run the football. You know, I'm liking what I'm seeing from Kenny Gainwell. I'm liking what I'm seeing, you know, just in the run game, just on their end. And, you know, Jaylen Warren also, too, in that fold. But the Packers, to me, Jordan Love, man, he still got to prove it to me. You know, I'm not saying that I don't believe in Jordan Love, but he still got some proving to me to do. And so I think that the Steelers are able to hold this game down at home, man. I got them winning this football game 24-21 Steelers. And then we got the Monday night slate between the Washington Commanders and the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs, man, it's a team that a lot of people thought was dead a couple weeks ago. You know, they showing they medal the last couple of weeks. And, you know, the Commanders, you know, they're walking wounded a little bit. Jaden Daniels, you know, nicked up. You know, they just got a couple injuries just on this side of the coin as well. I just think, and we'll keep it short and sweet, I think the game is played out in Kansas City. I think the Kansas City Chiefs win this football game. I think the Commanders, they've came down to earth a little bit after that, wonderful rookie season from Jaden Daniels. It's a thing called what we call out here sophomore slumps out here. I think that the organization with Dan Quinn is kind of going through a sophomore slump a little bit. So I got the Chiefs, man, because the Chiefs, they real confident right now. And, this is a game played at home for them. They 3-1 on the season at home. So I got the Chiefs in this football game, man. I got it 31-17 Chiefs, man. So that's my look across week number 8 across the National Football League. It's just kind of little where we get into the real part of the season where teams now, especially if you're in that 2-5 sector or 2-4 sector, it could be good night nurse, man. You take another L, man, especially this week. So we'll see what it do, man. Coming up, man, we'll close this thing out, man. I got my Big Five, my NBA Big Five intriguing stories going into the NBA season as that NBA slate has jumped off. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Five Sports Podcast. The Spot. I got my NBA Big Five stories going into the NBA season. This is the first Big Five of the NBA year, man. As the season has jumped off, it's been an epic first week of the NBA year, man. Whole new look, whole new swag to the NBA with NBC taking over the television package or joining into the television package along with Amazon into the fold. So it's a lot of newness going on across the NBA. And so we're going to get right into it, man. We're going to get right into it. And at number 5. Number 5 is just a one-word situation for me. And this one word has been epic over probably the last 24 hours or so. And it's gambling. Gambling, yes, gambling, yes, sir. The National Basketball Association with all the other sports leagues have jumped into the bed with these gaming houses. And, we can all bet from the phone. We've all, got our bet on. Some of us at a more high financial level than, say, others. And, for me, I've got mixed feelings about it. I'm not, a person that say, hey, don't go get your paper. Hey, if there's some low-hanging fruit out there, go ahead and get that money. But also, too, we got a sport where it's a paying customer to it. And, one that would go down that foxhole and say that the sporting landscape is rigged to a certain degree, kind of hard not to argue with that. It's a big money at stake just across the board on so many levels. And so we've seen this thing come down the pipeline more recently with the Chauncey Billups, in the Damon Jones situation and the Scary Terry situation. All three of these gentlemen was formerly, locked up or hemmed up and charged, from a whole FBI standpoint, at a high level of, mob activity. And, for me not to think that Adam Silver don't know what's going on at a kind of deeper level in his involvement of the players across the league. Either he's a guy that has no pulse of his own league, or he's a guy that, FOS is what we all know what that means, if we, on that level with it. So I just think that, this is a situation that could spiral out of control from a standpoint of when you got the mob activity with it. What comes with that, folks? It's called snitching. And so this pipeline or this whole, world or underworld of athletes and players, making bets and selling information and trading information and such as that. Hey, we've seen this before if you're an OG out here. We've seen this before. I go back to the 1980s, the National Football League and, Henry Hill and going back to, mob activities and things of that nature, betting on games and guys fixing games and so forth. This ain't my first rodeo. So now for it to be in a situation where you can just do it easily from your phone and just a whole lot of money is now more at stake. Yeah, you already know what it is, man. People ain't that naive. And so we got an inside or a nice little glimpse of just that, at the forefront yesterday with the whole FBI situation with the National Football League. So, yeah, number 5, man, gambling and where this thing going to go and how this thing is going to be regulated and see if a few other gentlemen from the NBA specter will be, indicted or charged or hemmed up by the FBI coming down the pipeline. So we'll definitely see what that do. At number 4, Number 4 is really a one-word situation for me, and it's called West, and that's the Western Conference. Oklahoma City Thunder, defending NBA champions, we'll put them to the side for a moment. But you got teams like the Los Angeles Clippers out there, and that whole situation with Kawhi Leonard this summer. We can't forget about that with the, ghost job and them circumventing the NBA salary cap. What Adam Silver gonna do about that? He's a guy that now, got a lot on his plate right about now. Real talk. And so how that situation gonna happen? But the West as a whole, just from a basketball standpoint, you got the Memphis Grizzlies that's out there. You got the Golden State Warriors out there. You got the Houston Rockets out there that leveled up. You got the Denver Nuggets that leveled up and making some big time moves with their acquisitions. Just got an opportunity to watch all these teams play through the first week of the season. And I'm liking some of the additions, what I see from these teams, man. I think that they've all got one thing in common, and what they realize is that, depth is the king. And we seen with Oklahoma City last year is that they're a young team and they was deep as hell. And that's what helped them out, to be able to get through, the long, force of winning an NBA championship. So the West, we're going to see just with outside of Oklahoma City, if each one of these teams are able to kind of level up and be able to knock off OKC as the defending NBA champions. To be able to get out of the West as well, as the Western Conference champions. And so, the West, man, coming in at number 4. What we got out here in that landscape is going to be interesting to see throughout the duration of the season. At number 3 on this one-word theme, I got Wemby coming in at number 3. Oh, man. The man catching oops back was not even jumping, man. Looking like he just hooping on a Nerf rim out here, man. Just good to see, first and foremost, that he's healthy. Being able to contribute to the San Antonio Spurs, trying to get back to the mountaintop of their organization. Good young players on their team, and Stephen Castle, and, Fox didn't play the other night, but just, Dylan Harper out there putting in work. Nice little young rookie, man, coming out from Rutgers, man, the son of Ron Harper. So they're making some nice little moves in the youth movement, but Wemby, man, he look like he out there kicking butt and taking names, man, just straight abusing Anthony Davis, man. Man, boy, a guy that just that big out there with the crosses, with the handles with it, man. Come on, man. Oh, my Lord. So I got Wemby coming in at number 3. At number 2, I got the East coming in at number 2 as a whole conference. The East that most people would think is wide open, and the Pacers was able to get to the NBA Finals last season. They've had some, roster reconstruction just a little bit with Halliburton being out and Miles Turner, up and ship, bouncing to the Milwaukee Bucks. And so a lot of people believe it's the New York Knicks, conference to lose. The Atlanta Hawks has made some good moves over the offseason, bringing in Porzingis. It's a lot of, sneaky teams out there. A team such as Orlando that's trying to creep on the come up as well. Detroit, another playoff team last year. So that, Milwaukee, as I mentioned a little earlier as well, with Giannis still in the fold, probably the best player in the Eastern Conference. And so there's a lot of different, vibes and different flavors in the Eastern Conference, man. So it's kind of hard for me to say if it's the Knicks to lose, because the Knicks, it's been a minute since they got to the NBA Finals, and the Knicks just keep on nicking. Some just always kind of happen to get thrown off with the New York Knicks. So it's going to be interesting to see, man. But, I got that East coming in at number 2. What it do? And who able to come out of the East. Can't forget about the Boston Celtics as well. They actually was looking good without my man JT out there as well. So I had to put some respect on Boston's name also. Then at number 1, man, I got Oklahoma City, man. Can this young team be able to repeat? Sam Presti just looked like he just got 1,000,001 draft picks coming down the fold. Young players, contributing. Just having guys bounce off the bench with a spring and out there big time hooping. Mark Daigneault, he's probably going to get better as a coach after winning this first NBA championship last season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being SGA. This team already has been tested earlier this season, pulling out 2 big time overtime victories, man, especially last night on the road against the Pacers. And so, are they going to be able to repeat this season, man? So we'll see what it do. But that's my big 5 NBA stories, man, as we mosey on into the NBA season. There's a lot of things that's going to unfold in the NBA. Can't forget about LeBron James being out. We'll see when he come back for the Los Angeles Lakers. We got, like I said, the whole new swag with ESPN and Chuck and inside the NBA. So it's a lot of good stuff and good vibes going on across the National Basketball Association. As well, can't forget about NFL going into week number 8. We got the college landscape, college football jumping off as well. Got college basketball actually coming back into the fold, jumping off as well. I think Louisville play Kansas coming up. So we'll see what it do, man. But I appreciate y'all, man. We're going to get up out of here. Definitely enjoy the weekend. Let your head down, vibe out. Check out what's going on across the sporting landscape. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast.